It was not that I was intimidated to get started as much as it was I just didn't want people to know I was young. Once I realized like, oh, people are going to like me for me, that's when I really saw my business start to pick up.
Welcome, everyone, to the Closing Table podcast, real accounts from real estate professionals from across the country, brought to you by WindowStill. I'm your host, Kat Schooler, and today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Katie Kenny of the Katie Kenny Group, Chicagoland realtor, Gen Z voice of real estate, and contributing writer for BAM. Katie, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for taking the time today. So, Katie, let's start at the beginning. What made you decide to get into real estate?
So I got into real estate right when I graduated college in 2022. Prior to getting my license, I worked at a construction company actually for residential construction and house painting for 3 years during college. So I was knocking on doors and doing sales and management for that. And I was driving home from University of Illinois every weekend, running that business. So I got to sit down with so many different people in all these different jobs as like a sophomore, junior, senior in college. And I was so interested in like just being able to solve people's problems too, because I was basically consulting with them before they were doing these construction projects. And I fell in love with that process. And so I was already pretty familiar with the homes and stuff. And so that got me interested in getting my real estate license. And I eventually want to buy investment properties and be in that realm too. And I figured becoming a realtor was the best way to take that step in the direction.
That's awesome. Was anybody in your life into real estate? Like, is that where you got the idea from, or you just always were attracted to it?
No one in my life was in real estate. I just was around houses so much. And I think working with a lot of my construction clients, a lot of them were entrepreneurs and self employed. And seeing them do that made me want to be an entrepreneur too and run my own business because I don't like being told what to do. So
That's valid. I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel that way. And was it kind of what you expected? Right? I think a lot of people, when they want to work for themselves and they're like, I'm going to make my own schedule, then maybe they feel like there's suddenly a void, right? Because no one's telling them what to do. Like they don't like it, but they maybe need it. Did you find it to be what you expected when you went off on your own?
I thought it was better than I expected actually, because I knew it was going to be hard and I knew it was going to be a lot of work. And I went into it thinking, okay, I may not sell a house for a year or two. Like I saved up all my money so that if I didn't, I'd be okay. And then I ended up selling a house pretty quickly after getting my license, which was way easier than it should have been too. Because then I had this expectation that, oh, like it's all going to be that easy. But I loved how hard I had to work and how hard I still have to work because you have to earn the clients and you have to earn people's trust and you get to do something different every day. Because I personally cannot just do the same thing every day. I have to do something different and have variety. And being able to do that within the same career and the same job, I guess, is so awesome to me. So it was better than I expected.
Well, I'm glad that it's turned out exactly, if not, or actually better than you expected it to be. And in your first year, I mean, I have not sold homes, but it sounds like you had a great first year. You had 4 million in sales. I know you had a more ambitious goal than that, but you did really well, yeah?
Yes, thank you. I'm hard on myself. I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I am one where I set pretty lofty goals, and then if I don't meet it, I have to calm myself down and be like, it's okay. You did better than most realtors do their first year. So once I put it into perspective like that, and being a solo agent from the start too, I set very high expectations for myself, and I had to be okay that I didn't meet that goal.
I think, people approach expectations different ways. I think, like, some people, it is good to set a super ambitious goal and just get close. And other people, I think their mindset, like, they need to hit the goal. So, you're just doing what works best for your mindset.
Yeah. And I think the other thing was it was kind of a reality check for me too, because I had basically always hit the goals that I set when I worked in sales and construction. And so when I didn't hit it for real estate, I was like, wait, am I a failure now? And I had to basically changed my perspective that this isn't like a 1 year thing, like the job I was doing in construction. This wasn't just a short thing. This is like my career, and I have plenty of time to grow.
That's a great way to look at it. And you had some kind of interesting tactics you took in your first year to start to get your name out there. You wrote a BAM article about it, which was really cool, where you were offering to do open house for other agents for their listings. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I started my business on open houses. That was really how I grew my database because I was 22 when I started, just turned 24 now, and a lot of people who are 23, 24 years old don't have houses and they're not in a position to buy. And so I knew I needed to do something to grow my database of qualified homeowners and home buyers. So I would reach out to the agents at my brokerage and the ones who held a lot of listings, but who weren't necessarily hosting open houses. And I would offer to host an open at their listing. And especially at the very beginning when I didn't have a ton of like rep to my name, I guess, and they didn't know if they could trust a new agent. So what I offered to do was do a social media video with like home tour for them. I would like tell them my marketing plan. I would promote it on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok leading up to it. I would follow up. I had a very specific follow-up plan afterwards, and I would tell the listing agent that and then actually do it too. And that's how I got my first few clients actually was just through marketing the open house up front, telling all the neighbors about it, door knocking the neighbors beforehand, circle dialing, sending out invite email to my database, but then also all the neighbors too. And then at the open house, having value more than just, oh, this house has 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, having all the open houses that are going on in the neighborhood that weekend, giving them that list. The value up front, I feel like people really noticed that too, like consumers. And then I would also have a list of all the homes that were on the market and what's in the private network too, and just offering additional value that people are not going to expect from a realtor at an open house who's just there to sell that house. And then my follow up game is pretty good. So then I'd call everybody afterwards, and I'd send other properties that were similar to the one that they saw, or if I had a conversation with them, I would make sure to like mention our conversation too. So it was just the whole process from before the open house, what I would do to get people in the door, because that's the most important thing. And then just following up afterwards is huge because most people won't follow up at all, maybe once.
Right. And there's so many good nuggets in there. Especially the process of circle dialing. So I hadn't heard anybody talk about that before. Can you go a little bit more in depth in what that is?
So circle dialing, you can do it around your own listings, around open houses in your neighborhood or farm. So what I do for circle dialing is you can use any of those neighborhood database, like where you pull the numbers or the emails for the neighborhood. So I use Mojo, but there's also like RedX, Vulcan 7. You can get the numbers from Remine, if certain markets have it. Mine does with the MLS. But pulling the numbers, having a CSV file of them, and then, or you just download it from like the dialer, like Mojo is what I use. And then just calling all the neighbors and saying, hey, how's it going? And I like go through my script. Oh, I'm hosting an open house at 123 Main Street this week. I'd love for you to stop by. By the way, who do you know that would be interested in moving to the neighborhood? As a neighbor, like I'd love for you to like be able to choose your next neighbor or something like that. And so just doing that and making sure you get a lot of conversations in and leaving messages, and then also like door knocking the neighbors. So just prospecting the neighbors around a listing is what I would define as circle prospecting dialing.
That's so cool. And do you find a lot of people answer the phone? A lot of people answer the door? I feel like anymore people are so closed off. Like we can reach people like so much greater than we ever could before, but we're all like hiding in our houses. Do you feel like people are responsive?
Actually, yeah. And it's so awesome. And I love it so much because of the fact that nobody's expecting someone to, especially door knocking. I've really gotten into door knocking because I have a Tom Ferry coach, and he's like, are you having 10 conversations a day and setting one appointment? And I was finding that with doing dials every day, I wasn't always hitting the goal of setting an appointment. When I'm knocking on doors, like I will set an appointment every time. Not with every single person, but I'll set an appointment once a day, if not more. So people answer the door when they see someone there, not trying to necessarily sell them anything, but maybe just trying to give them value or help them or talk to them. Because if you're showing up just to be somebody's friend and have a nice conversation with them, it shows if you're not trying to sell them something. And so with calling people, that's why it's a little bit, I find that I'm better in person because when I'm calling people, sometimes they feel like they're being sold something, even when you're not. Which is why I like doing the circle dialing for open houses too. Because if you're just inviting them to an open house, it's not like you're selling them anything or like, hey, let me sell your house.
Right. And like one of the other things you mentioned in your article, I think was like, oh, letting them know this is going to happen so that there's probably going to be a lot of people parking on their street or, just a lot of traffic. Like that would be the end for me if I was the person answering the phone. I'd be like, oh, well, thanks.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just giving them the heads up too. Because if you can become friends with the neighbors around your listing, that just makes them that much more excited to see you selling it. And like when you do a good job, you can tell them about it and you have more to promote and you have a reason to keep going back and talking to them.
So that's kind of more of a like, I would consider that kind of like an old school real estate practice. You also have talked about finding leads off of TikTok without having a bajillion followers. You can still mine leads from TikTok. How have you found success with that?
It's not like a secure thing as the social media leads. And that's what I realized very early on was like the people that are getting all their business off of social media, they've spent a long time building that. It's really hard to do for a new agent. And I'm very realistic when it comes to that. And I will never claim that I get 100% of my business off of social media. But TikTok is cool because it's so like the algorithm is so good that if you're posting local content and you're saying local words, it's going to get pushed to the local people if you're putting your location in there. And so I had this video. This was like it's such a terrible video too. I'm so embarrassed of it. Like this is really early on. I'm like talking about how houses in this one suburb in Chicago, most of them don't have basements, and that it was like surprising to me to learn that. And I had like three or four people reach out to me even months after posting that video. They messaged me either on Instagram or they would text me because TikTok DMs are kind of weird. You have to like both follow each other to be able to DM on
Mm.
there. So people would reach out to me and were like, "Hey, I'm looking for a house in Rolling Meadows, which was the suburb I was talking about in that video. I saw your TikTok video. Would you be able to help me?" or something along those lines. And this was like this happened a couple times. I was like, what about that video was like hitting so many people, hitting the right people. And it was just because I was talking about something local and it was hitting those people because people that are in other states, they don't care. Like they're so then the algorithm can sense that and it doesn't feed it to non-local people. Which is why I like doing like the neighborhood spotlight videos and like the home tours and being specific about location, especially on TikTok. Instagram, you can do a little bit more broad stuff because it's not the same as TikTok. But that's how I've kind of gotten a few pretty good leads off of TikTok.
I'd like to take just a moment and tell you about our sponsor. WindowStill provides premium real estate media for agents, builders, and property management companies nationwide. To learn more, visit windowstill.com. WindowStill, helping America find their next chapter. Now, back to the episode. I think that's a great nugget of advice, just really kind of like narrowing the focus of it so the algorithm can do all the work for you for months.
Yeah, literally, it was so weird. It was like a lot of months later. And I was like, oh, I hate that people are still seeing that video of me too. I had terrible lighting, it was terrible audio. I was still in that practice makes perfect part of learning how to be on video and stuff because I had to show up a lot on video to finally be comfortable and be good at it.
Totally. Well, and it's funny because I've been talking about this with other people that I think TikTok especially has um, desensitized us to kind of like we want more off the cuff video. Like TikTok really has kind of become that, whereas like Instagram can still be very curated. Curated, that's a good word for it. TikTok is a lot less curated, and I think we've been a lot more comfortable with that overall. And I actually think sometimes it works better. It just depends on your audience.
Exactly. Like, you know who Alex Earl is?
No, I don't.
Okay, so she's like my age. She's this big influencer on TikTok, and she's just like so authentically herself. She just graduated University of Miami. Her followers love her because she is just so authentically 23 years old, partying, living her life and telling the stories of it. And I think that's really cool too. And honestly, I kind of wish Instagram were more like that because then it would be a lot less curated. But that's the thing I do like about TikTok is you make friends on there, just people that watch your stuff and comment on it. I have people that will go to bat for me in my comments if, and I don't have that many followers. It's not like I'm TikTok famous. It's just that you get to know people and they feel like they know you more, like, which is the most important part.
Right. And I think your videos are really great. You're often commenting on like news, in the real estate business, especially I would love I love when people mess up, your video about the HGTV star, the Flipster star who's in trouble for embezzlement. I was like, ooh, tell me the tea. Where do you get all of your ideas from, or how do you come up with your ideas for social media content?
Yeah, so I think so. I do a green screen for a BAM article every week, and that's the thing that I love about BAM is it's like nobody else is doing this agent education that's also entertaining, that's no fluff, that you actually want to read or listen to like BAM is. And so that article they wrote like what other news platforms are writing articles like that, and that's just something that's interesting for the general public, whether they're a realtor or not, to like listen to, because who doesn't want to hear about somebody going to jail for committing real estate fraud? Like, it's crazy, but it's something that is interesting to people, and the like title is kind of clickbaity, and that's why I like doing the BAM articles, because I'm picking something that's entertaining but also educational, and someone would want to keep watching the video.
One of the other things I've heard you talk about, and I believe this, so I'm going to believe your statistic that most real estate agents, or the average age, is about 50 years old. Um, and you're a Gen Z, you've come into this business and found such great success, but were you intimidated as a young person in this business to try and get started?
At the beginning, yes. And it was not that I was intimidated to get started as much as it was I just didn't want people to know I was young, because I felt that if they knew that, oh, she's in her 20s or she's new, people were going to not respect me as much and not trust me, especially with clients. And I found that when I wasn't being myself, having that young energy that I think is what attracts a lot of people to me in the first place, when I was pretending to be something that I'm not, which is like super poised, like it's not like I'm not poised, but like super professional all the time, like very business, like no, like kind of like know it all, like realtor, just straight business. It You didn't make those relationships as much, and I felt like I wasn't doing as much as I could and having the same relationships with the clients. So once I figured out like, oh, I can kind of be myself more, and I got more comfortable, um, I felt like I was able to get more clients too, because you attract what you put out. So coming into the business really young, I had to get used to having a lot of conversations with people that are 50, 60 years old, because that's who owns majority of the homes too. But once I realized like, oh, people are going to like me for me, even though I'm 20 years younger than them, it's okay. Um, I got more comfortable, and that's when I really saw my business start to pick up too. And I have to say that like I owe a lot of that getting comfortable to Lindsay Joe, who I met through Instagram, and she kind of took me under her wing, and I'm so grateful for that. And she was like, you should really channel being young and being Gen Z. People are gonna trust you more if you're open about who you are and your identity too. So once I started kind of promoting that personal brand, I found that it was more fun to work too.
That's great, especially because I think like when you're younger, you focus on maybe the negative aspects of the stereotype when it's like maybe we're not thinking about all the positive things of like you have a lot of energy, you maybe have more time. You're maybe thinking more outside the box because being older and in a business longer also could have its negative stereotypes, just like both sides. So I think it's great that you've embraced it, and yeah, it's working. I love your social media. I was telling you this before we started. You're so authentic on there. I think it's a really great way for people to get to know you. And I'm so glad you're letting that shine through.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like it's more fun just being myself, especially on my stories too, is once I started being myself and just talking to my camera like it's my friend, because I realized like I am kind of talking to my friends because the people that follow me and were interacting with my stuff, they're not just like a follower, like those are my friends. And that's what I like about this era of like the digital age too, is you can have so many more people in your life because of social media, because we can have relationships with people all around the country. And it's so cool to me too. And I thought when I first got into real estate, I felt like, oh, people aren't going to take me seriously, they're not going to respect me. I thought having that young side was like a weakness, but then as soon as I like started talking about it, I just started meeting way more people online too, which I thought was is kind of cool, to like find my voice like that.
Certainly. So you've learned so much in this time that you've been, helping people buy and sell real estate. What would you say is like one of the biggest lessons you've learned?
One of the biggest lessons I've learned since I started real estate was definitely just learning to love the day to day and the little things that go into the process, and not focusing as much on the outcome, just detaching from the sale and making a commission check and just falling in love with like just having the conversations, connecting with new people, and really figuring out like that's what I love about what I'm doing. So just focusing on how can I do more of that, delegate out the things that drain my energy, and go and have better relationships and better conversations. So I would say like when I first started, I wasn't as focused on that. I was like, how do I sell more real estate? And now I'm just focused on how do I talk to more people? Like how do I make people's day? Because that's going to help me sell more real estate in the end.
That's so great. That's great advice too, especially because we're also different, and so the things that might drain you might light someone else up. So it's not like you're just sloughing it off onto somebody else.
Exactly. Like I'm like in a disc test, like I'm very high DI, like I'm not an SRC. Like I don't like sitting and like doing like admin tasks and in organizational stuff. I'm very like my brain is in 100 different places at once, and so I love that I can do more of the be a visionary for my business and channel that energy, and then get help in the areas where I'm not as strong, because you can't do it all. And I think that was something that I also had to kind of learn my lesson to, trying to do it all and just tell my clients, yep, I've got it, and have no one helping me too. That was definitely a reality check. Once as soon as I started getting a lot more business, I was like, oh my god, I can't do this all on my own. Like I need a transaction coordinator, I need an assistant to help me get all this stuff done, because you can't be doing everything all at once.
So true. So when you were looking to expand and bring people into your business, like how did you find people? How did you know the right people for you?
So I think the first step that I had was when I was so drained from doing the admin and the non money making activities that I couldn't even do some of the money making activities, which are just going out and circle dialing, hosting the open houses, having more conversations. That was when it occurred to me, okay, I need help. I can't do all this on my own, because I was so exhausted from doing some things that like weren't making me money. So then I asked around for transaction coordinator first. I felt like that was the first step in growing my business so that I could handle more, because you got to get the deal closed once you get it under contract, and that's where the transaction coordinator, my TC Glenda, is awesome, and she just takes it off my plate once we go under contract. Um, and so that was the first step. And then the assistant, I have an admin, so that's just kind of doing all the back end stuff like scheduling the appointments and MLS, doing a lot of like the ordering of marketing materials and those things that are not that are very important still, but just not necessary for me to do. Someone else can do it that doesn't necessarily have a license.
Do you have any like memorable client moments, of helping people buy or sell their house?
Yes, I love them so much. So, okay, I'm thinking specifically of a transaction I had. We closed like 2 months ago. So their names are Nicole and Jason, and they were relocating here from out of state. But Nicole, she grew up around here. She like went to the same high school as me. Was a little bit older, but I met them at an open house in September, and so they were still out of state though, and there was this house in the private network, which is basically just like the coming soon house. And to this day, this house is still our Roman Empire, if you know that like saying, because it's still in the private network and they still won't let anyone see it. It's been over 6 months now. And so me and her had been talking about that house, and I just kept following up. And then eventually they were coming here to look at houses. And so we saw three houses. On the third one, we got it under contract. We were in multiple offers, and we competed against like 8 other offers. We were not the highest offer, but we still won. And then they wanted a really quick close. And so we were FHA though. And there was a part of the basement that was not going to pass the FHA appraisal because it needed to be painted. And since we're closed now, I think I can say this. I don't know if it's illegal or not that I did this, but during the inspections, we're there for 2 hours, right? And the lender texted me like, "Hey, this is gonna kind of need to be painted before the appraisal," and I was like, "Okay, say less." So I went to Home Depot, bought paint, a paintbrush, and during the 2 hour inspection, I painted a bunch of sections of the basement that I was worried were going to be a problem. And to this day, the listing agent has no idea. The sellers have no idea. They had already moved out at that point. And the only people that know are, well, now anyone who listens to this, but then my clients at the inspection, and then the inspector and me and the lender, because she was like, yeah, it kind of like needs to get done or else it's not going to pass FHA. And I was like, I cannot make any problems because we got our offer accepted when it wasn't even the highest offer against all these other offers. Like I cannot have anything go wrong. And so that is just my favorite memory. And since I used to do construction and painting, it just like brought me back to my youth. So that is my favorite memory ever, and I think it probably always will be.
It's such a full circle moment?
Exactly. And it's just like, when you have those people that are like, they are your vibe and like they radiate at the same vibration as you, that was kind of like this couple and their family. I just felt like I was like the fifth member of their family. And it was just like, they're so funny and we have similar sense of humor. And it was just so fun to work with them too. And so that's like what made it all the more like fun and kind of sad when we closed because I was like, wait, I don't get to talk to you every day now.
And you hear that a lot, and people getting sad when it's like I don't know, it almost seems like a breakup, but it's not because the relationship goes on and everything's so good. But I think that's always like a testament, whether it's like the agent saying it or the client saying it. When you miss them, that's how you know you're doing everything right.
I know, and we still like message each other on Instagram and stuff, and we text, and that's what I love about just this job too. Is like, what other job can you be sending funny videos on Instagram to your client? Like, you don't get that. It's just so fun, and it can be what you can be whoever you want as a realtor, and just being an entrepreneur too is like it's just so fun to me.
That's so great. What are some of your goals for this year?
For this year, so it's 2024, my goals by end of year, I want to bring on one licensed agent to my team. I switched to Real, the brokerage, a couple months ago. Being that face of the brand in the Chicagoland area, since it is such a new brokerage around here, it's very big in other states, but it's not as big around here and it's getting bigger. So being able to just be proud of that brand, that's part of my goals. And I my goal is to do 36 transactions. Um, and then personal goals, I would say I want to, one of my goals for this year is to buy a property and just be consistent with doing yoga because I get very wrapped up in real estate and I'm like a 0 or 100 person when I'm like obsessed with what I'm doing. I don't really think about anything else. So just taking time for myself too and remembering that I am still in my 20s and I deserve to have like a 20s experience every now and then too. So that was not in my goals last year, and I made it a point to remind myself of that this year.
I think that's so great. And I think that it's very, like, everybody talks about like self care, and like maybe we're talking about it enough that we'll finally do it, right?
I know it's like taking your own advice for once because I feel like I give great advice to people and I'm like never gonna I never take it. So and it's also I spend a lot of time with like 50, 60 year olds because that's like a lot of my clients too. And I'm like, they always tell me, and that's when you know that you need to like listen to someone else's advice. They're like, you need to be a 24-year-old every once in a while. Like, you don't need to be doing this 24/7. And I was like, oh, like, because once it was like the third or fourth time that like one of my like older clients said that to me, I was like, okay, I should probably listen at this point.
Right. You're like, I'm going to put some like B24 on the calendar, you know?
Exactly. Like maybe once a quarter, like maybe twice if I'm being generous.
That's too funny. So the property you plan to buy, is that, are you going to start investing?
Yeah, so I want to either buy a flip or buy something, live in it for a year, and then rent it out. Um, I don't like talking about my goals before I hit them, which is why I'm like hesitant sometimes to talk about it. But yeah, I'm kind of deciding which route I want to go because either can be done. And I feel like as a realtor, we get to encounter so many amazing opportunities that are not on the market. Like, and it's just deciding which one I want to take advantage of at this point. So it's a cool position to be in. Um, so yeah, deciding between a flip or, and if I do a flip, then I would then buy a condo probably after that. That's kind of where I'm at right now with that.
I
I'll
love it.
update you when I decide.
Okay, cool. Because I love watching people do flips on Instagram. I follow, like Florida Flipsters, and I can't think of that other woman who's like in Vancouver who's flipping that like $2 million mid-century thing. I'm sure you've seen her.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I listen. I love a good. Could we call it a flipstagram? I don't know. I'm coining it. It's a thing.
I like that. Flipstagram. You know who is awesome? So she's in Delaware. She's a realtor, but Amanda Bradford, she's like kind of documenting the process of her flipping her current house and just for her to live in. And I'm like obsessed with that. It makes me want to do that. It makes me want to like paint a house and refloor a house myself. Um, so she's like documenting her process, which I think is cool too.
Oh, I'm gonna go check that out when we're done.
I'll send you her account.
Okay, cool, cool. So it doesn't have to be oriented towards your career, but do you have anything you're looking forward to this year?
This year, I am looking forward to traveling more because I didn't take any trips in 2023, like maybe one weekend trip. And this year, I've got a trip to Jersey in a couple weeks. I've got a trip to Dallas for the Tom Ferry Summit in, I don't know when that's August. I'm going to Vegas for the first time, which will be fun. Traveling a little more and taking some time to myself.
I love that. Oh, that sounds like so much fun.
I'm excited
Katie,
for Vegas.
oh yeah, you're gonna have a good time wherever you're gonna go. You're gonna be 24, when you're there, you're
Exactly.
gonna be all Gen Z. It's gonna be great.
Exactly.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Would you like to direct people how to find you?
Yes. So my Instagram is the Katie Kenny. Same with my TikTok. Same with my website, thekatiekenny.com. If people want to say hi, message me on Instagram, text me. Yeah, DM me. I will always respond.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for watching. This has been the Closing Table Podcast brought to you by WindowStill. I'm Kat Schooler. If you're enjoying this podcast, please make sure you're following us on Apple or Spotify. And if you're part of our YouTube audience, hit that subscribe and then put in the comments, I've subscribed, and I will personally respond to each and every one. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.